We have in America, and it is true.
Well, you've seen it through Associated Press, but you haven't
I'm
seen
saying
it
the
from
Obama
anywhere
administration
else.
has no idea what's in this document. I'm saying that the Obama administration gave in to the demand by the Ayatollah, you will not come on our military bases. The Ayatollah drew a red line, and John Kerry found a way to get around that red line by capitulating to the Iranians.
How, Senator, are you going to stop the funding of the IAEA if you can't stop the agreement itself?
I am in charge of the account, the Foreign Operations Subcommittee on Appropriations I chair. I'm in charge of the entire UN budget. $88 million will not be in our mark. If there's a continuing resolution, there will be no money for the IAEA. And the only way you can put it in is to get 60 votes on the floor. I need people to help me, but I will lead the charge to deny them funding until the Congress can look at a side deal. Why is Parchin so important? This is a military facility controlled by the Iranians where we know they've been testing nuclear detonators. We have no access to that facility. The agreement specifically prohibited an American being on the inspection team. The entire military complex that's been used by the Iranians in a clandestine fashion to develop a nuclear weapon is now off limits to the P5+1, and the Iranians control the inspection process. Of all the people on the planet you would allow to self-inspect, these people would be last.
So you've seen the draft, but you haven't seen the final agreement?
I have been briefed on the agreement, and it's gobbledygook and gibberish. I know what this agreement is. Lousy. If it wasn't lousy, I'd be able to look at it.
Going back to one of Joe's questions, though, how do you get the Republican voter to care about this? During the summer of Obamacare, people were coming to town halls and they were shouting at reps. I haven't seen any of that this summer.
No,
how do you get people fired up?
Come with me. I'll show you. Follow me around New Hampshire. Takes me about 30 seconds. You want to talk about the Iranian deal? Poop. And all I can say is that can you get a better deal should be the question for the next president. One, do we need a better deal? And can you get one? And I think the answer is yes to both. Then I talk about how I would do it. But I'm telling you, this is one of the defining moments of the 2016 election cycle. This is one of the defining moments in terms of foreign policy in decades. This is the most consequential vote any member of the Senate will take on foreign policy, I think, for the rest of our lives. Because what you've done set in motion empowering the most radical regime with capabilities that would be dangerous to our own national security. The only reason 3,000 died on 9/11 and not 3 million is they couldn't get the weapons to kill 3 million. Here's the question. If the Iranians, one, have they been lying about what they want to do? The answer is yes. They've been trying to build a bomb, not a power plant. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs said as much. I asked him, what have they been trying to do, Mr. Chairman? He said they've been trying to build a weapon. So they're liars to start with. You don't build a program this complex and this embedded into a mountain if all you want is a power plant. So they've been trying to develop a bomb. You don't have a detonator testing site to build a nuclear power plant for peaceful purposes. The question is this agreement dismantling the program as the goal was? Joe, the goal was to dismantle the nuclear program, to find out about their possible military dimensions, and basically stop what was clearly a march toward a weapon. We have failed on all fronts. There's a self-inspection regime regarding possible military dimensions, and the pathway forward over the next 15 years allows them to have 5,000 centrifuges. The advanced ones are just simply unplugged, and at year 15 they can do any damn thing they want to do. They can even reprocess. We're telling the United Arab Emirates and South Korea, don't enrich. We don't need any more nations making their own fuel. Canada and Mexico have nuclear power plants. They buy the fuel, they don't make it. We've allowed the most unreliable, dangerous regime on the planet to do things we wouldn't let our friends do. Why? Because they said we had to. The fear of a conflict with Iran has dictated terms of an agreement so beneficial to them and so weak for us.
You got it down to 8 minutes. But I can't even remember what the question was to begin with. But I have a second one, and it goes back to the Republican primary.
I'm on the fence about the Iranian deal, right?
Yeah, I could tell that. You're a typical political waffler. But
this is a big deal in 2016.
Well, it is, and the comparison with Munich is apt. So, is Trump the next Churchill?
Next Churchill?
Yes, sir.
Did Churchill have a brother? I mean, not Winston. Maybe there's another Churchill I don't know about. Here's what Trump
Well-
is seizing upon, I
Well,
think.
yeah, he's seizing upon a lot of stuff, and he's got 25% of the Republican primary votes, and the pollsters digging into that find out that it doesn't matter what you guys throw at him about his background and his record. No, we just like what he's saying today. So if this is as bad as you say it is, and the key issue of 2016 is a nominee
by about May. So we don't have enough guest workers. Now your question is a good one. How many green cards do you need? We're going to need over time thousands today and millions in the future. Why not say that? Because a green card is not a temporary worker program. It allows you to become in line for citizenship. As to the 11 million, I don't know about New Hampshire, but most of the illegal immigrants that exist in South Carolina are working. They're working in the shadows. They're being paid under the table. That hurts the working man and woman because paying a guy in cash is not a good thing. At the end of the day, they're not paying taxes. Many of them are paying into Social Security, but they'll never take out. There is no economic benefit to illegal immigration other than cheap labor. But over time, the economic benefit of legal immigration is going to be an imperative for us.
How are they paying into Social Security if they're
Some of
illegal
them
immigrants?
have false numbers. They pay into the system, but they never have the ability to take out.
And
There's
we-
about several billions of dollars in that fashion.
And you know that, but you don't know how to identify them?
Yeah, you do an E-Verify system. You take the current system and you replace it with one that actually works.
And E-Verify has been talked about for at least the last 10 or 15 years.
It's been in every bill I supported.
Right, and it never gets
It dies
enacted
in the
because-
House.
Partly because of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The business doesn't want to have.
Originally did, but they're okay now because we made it user-friendly. If I'm a Chamber of Commerce guy, I got to worry about, okay, how much burden does my business have to accept to deal with an illegal immigration problem? So we made it more user-friendly. I don't know if you have it here in New Hampshire, but we have it in South Carolina. The only document you need to get a job in America is a Social Security card. I could have that fake by midnight. I can make you Ronald Reagan. I can make you anybody you want to be. Until you address that problem, you never fix illegal hiring. The magnet of illegal immigration is economics. We have a border with Canada. We have a border with Mexico. I've never met an illegal Canadian. There may be some around. Let me know. I'll kick them out. They come to Myrtle Beach and march and go swimming. The Canadians, we're glad to have them, but they come and go back. Most people are here to improve their economic lot in life. They're fleeing poor countries to come here to work and make more money in 1 month than they can make in a year where they live. That's why we have illegal immigration. We have workers, our employers, willing to hire these folks, not to displace an American worker most of the time, just to find somebody to work. My goal is to make sure no American worker ever loses their job to a legal immigrant until you advertise here at home and nobody answers your call. Then you can have a guest worker. I'm not trying to take an American worker out of the workforce. I'm trying to make sure that employers have access to labor so they don't have to leave this country and they don't have to cheat. And if we don't improve our legal immigration system, then we're not going to be able to grow our economy. And as to me and Scott Walker and Rick Santorum, who are fine fellows, I dramatically disagree with your assessment that we don't need more legal immigration over time. We need more guest workers, but we need more green card holders because our economy cannot thrive or survive without infusing more workers. We're down to 2 workers. And when somebody comes to the University of New Hampshire from India or China with a degree that would be helpful to them, to New Hampshire or the American economy, in my view, they should get a green card attached to that degree. This is insane to educate some of the smartest people in the world and force them to go back.
Well, a lot of people who are not only in Trump's camp, but of conservative camp say that it is insane to allow licenses for illegal immigrants and benefits for illegal immigrants and education for illegal immigrants. Where were you on those 3?
Well, one, education is a Supreme Court decision saying you can't ask the status of a child in terms of their citizenship for public education.
Is that sane or insane?
That's a Supreme Court ruling that I think needs to be replaced in this regard. Are you for emergency room treatment? Let's start with the hardest one. If a kid's hit on a bike and they're 10 years old, are you going to wait and say, are you legal or not? You're going to treat them. Because I know you're a good man under all that gruffness. So all I can tell you,
Take that down, Julia.
all I can tell you is that we start with a simple proposition. No American who's got a heart at all is going to deny emergency room care to a child. The question is, should we deny schooling to an illegal immigrant child? The answer is that we should replace this broken system. The downside is there are rapists and murderers among the group. Most are good, some are bad. Here's the problem with legal immigration. You come here as a baby, you go to school for 18 years in New Hampshire, and some politician says, go home. You come here as a 1-year-old child, you've been educated in the state of New Hampshire, you've got friends here, you're probably a nice person, and we tell you to go home. You got no place to go. How did it get this way? Most of us look the other way. Most of us don't ask who's in the kitchen when we play golf at Hilton Head.
Didn't play Hilton Head. Keywood.
Well, when you play golf at Kiewel, you may look, boy, there are a lot of Hispanic people here. Where do you think they come from? You ever been to a meat packing plant? Go. You're going to see 99% Hispanics. All I can say is that I'm tired of talking about it and I want to fix it. And you got to get a Democrat in the room. You got the unions who would agree with Jeff Sessions. We don't need any more legal immigrants because they want to control every job. Jeff Sessions and the AFL-CIO have the same position on immigration.
Control every job. How are they going to control jobs if, as you say, there aren't enough people for the jobs?
The unions want to control the workforce. They don't want to bring people outside in because they're having a hard time selling unions. The smaller the workforce, the more control they have, better off for them. Unions oppose guest worker programs. They use the same rhetoric as the radio guys do. We don't need these foreigners coming in here taking our jobs. If you go to Union Hall, it makes talk radio look like church. You want to see really some racist comments? There's some folks on the left in the unions that are pretty tough about these foreign workers coming in here and taking our jobs. So what I want to do is find a way to assimilate the 11 million. Most of them are already ingrained in the workforce. I don't want to assimilate a crook. I don't want to assimilate somebody who's had repeated violations of the law. If all you have done is broken the border laws, I'll give you a second chance under the following conditions. In 6 years, you have to pass an English proficiency exam to keep your work permit renewed. Because if you can't learn the language, you'll never be successful. I don't speak English that well, but I've come a long way. So the bottom line is the conditions to stay are good for us as a country. A fine shall be paid because you broke the law. The language shall be learned because you need to, and it's important for us that you do. You will not get ahead of those who've been doing it right. You will never get a green card until those in front of you have a chance to get theirs. You can't get a green card for 10 years because that's the penalty of breaking the border laws.
So you are not among the conservatives who say the reason that this idea of deporting 11 million people is because you can't find them. You apparently can find them all and make them get in a line and take an English test, which puts you ahead of all the other conservatives who are against Trump on the immigration thing, like George Will, and say, it's ridiculous, you can't find them and send them out of the country.
What you can do is find the bad guys by having the good people come forward. I'm in the camp. I think it'd be very hard. I mean, I don't know how you tell an illegal immigrant. You stop every Hispanic person in the country and say, hey, prove to me you're a citizen. You know, a million are illegal Irish. Nobody ever talks about the legal Irish.
A million are illegal
1
Irish?
million illegal immigrants are Irish.
How come you know that number, but you don't know the number of legal immigrants in the country?
Because the Irish people tell us we got 1 million people over here and they're all our cousins.
Stupid Irish.
But they're honest. But no, the Irish follow me around everywhere. I'm like huge in Ireland. So the bottom line is Trump wants to keep the good ones. He wants everybody to go back wherever go back is. Then we'll let the wonderful people come. Here's what I think would work. If you're here illegally and you haven't committed a felony, raise your hand. People will raise their hand because they get to come out of the shadows. They'll get biometrically identified. If they're lying, we'll find it out. And those who don't come out of the shadows will be easier to find. And those who don't come out of the shadows will get a driver's license.
How is this raise your hand thing going to work exactly? In South Carolina, you're going to have them all, everybody in the state one day, who's a citizen, who's illegal, who's illegal? How's this going to work?
It's a phased-in deal. You don't do the legalization part until you get operational control over your border. The one thing I would never do for a Democrat is to give legal status without first securing my border. Because if I give legal status first, I can't count on the Democrats to give me what I need on border security. I don't trust them. They don't trust us either. They're never going to give us all we want on border security until we tell them eventually what happens with 11 million. Why would you give us everything we want on securing the border and hoping one day we'll talk to you about the illegal immigrants? So here's what we do. We define border security as 90% operational control, 100% situational awareness. We double the number of Border Patrol agents from 20,000 to 40,000, giving you one every 1,000 feet. We triple the number of drones. We put sensors in the desert where we need to put sensors. And we have a very robust visa tracking system because 40% of illegal immigrants overstayed their visa.
We only have 2 workers for every, right, instead of 16 to support the old people. But
Eventually.
You're going to be able to find enough people to double the Border Patrol workforce. Are these going to be illegal immigrants you're going to deputize? Or you're going to find, what, union thugs? Where are these people going to come from?
I think we can increase hiring by 20,000 in a nation of 300-something million.
That's okay.
That's okay. I
All
think
right.
we can find 20,000 additional Border Patrol agents. And one thing I would do is go to our military. Hey, you did a good job. Go work for the Border Patrol. The bottom line is we can increase capacity in a reasonable amount, doubling the Border Patrol, 20,000 more agents. Once you get those metrics, and it has to be metrics, we can't just say, trust me. We have to have a definable system that says now the border is adequately secured. We get input from border state governors. We just don't make this up and have the Department of Homeland Security Secretary say the border is now secured. It is a collaborative process of stakeholders on the border, defined metrics, military input as to how you secure the ungoverned part, where you can't build a wall. Then once we check that block, the legalization begins. At the same time, E-Verify begins. It is literally a phased system. So what we will do is we will create an information program. We'll have it regional. We'll have it state by state, where there's a place for illegal immigrants to come out of the shadows and a system set up to do the biometric identification. We've identified almost everybody in Afghanistan. As Colonel Graham, I've been to Afghanistan working with our biometric system where so many people now are enrolled in Iraq and Afghanistan where they do an iris scan, they'll do fingerprints, and that's how we're catching a lot of these IED guys because they've been caught once and they go into the system. So you'll never convince me that we can't biometrically identify people because I've seen it happen in war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. And their incentive, Joe, is to come out of the shadows and get a legal status to have a different life. If their daughter's raped now, they don't have to worry about going to the cops and getting deported. They can go to the cops.
Well, I think that's the case now.
In some cities it is.
And not just sanctuary cities, but just about anyone. Mr. Cousineau, who's going to write a story up about this and does business reporting as well as other things, may have a question of his own that he's burning to ask.
And here's my retort. If you don't like what I'm doing, come up with another idea. I'm all ears. But I've been doing it for 10 years. I know where the sweet spots are and where the friction points are. You're never going to get a bill through the Senate and the House that doesn't have a pathway to citizenship as long as they're Democrats. You're never going to get me to have a bill that doesn't secure the border first. You're never going to get me to vote for a bill that will not fix it forever. My goal is simple, not to do what Ronald Reagan did. Love Ronald Reagan. He gave amnesty to 3 million people, and he did not do the things I'm talking about. If you don't secure the border, control who gets a job, and increase legal immigration, you'll be right back where you are today.
That answer your question, Mike?
Jeb Bush's campaign manager says what matters to the New Hampshire voters is paralysis in Washington. How much are you part of that paralysis?
I would say whatever problems in Washington, I'm the solution. Senator Cruz is more of the problem than I am. I've never suggested that we shut down the government to defend Obamacare, because I've concluded after my vast experience in life, living in the back of a liquor store and running a pool room, that you're not going to get Obama to sign a law repealing his signature issue. Sounds good. People are frustrated. I get being frustrated. Planned Parenthood. If I'm president, we're not going to give a penny to Planned Parenthood in my budget. But we're not going to shut down the federal government, I hope, because we're upset with Planned Parenthood. Because if you shut down the federal government, you lose the ability to defend yourself. The Army needs to be paid. We need our defenses up and running 24/7 because we're going to get hit again if we don't watch it. And all I can say is that the big stuff we're not talking much about. The retirement of the baby boomers, something like Simpson Bowles, rebuilding a military that's going to be at 1940 levels when it comes to the size of the Army, 1915 size Navy, at a time of growing threat to our homeland. So I want to have a conversation before this primary ends about big stuff. How can you destroy ISIL without more American ground forces? I'm dying to hear how anybody on our side thinks, Jeb included, that you will destroy ISIL by dropping bombs on them. The 3,500 people on the ground are not enough to turn the tide in Iraq. All I can say is that if we don't go up to 10,000 like General Keane suggests, we're never going to get a military advantage over ISIL in Iraq, and if you don't deal with Syria, you never fix Iraq.
So speaking of raising the troop levels in Iraq, so if you're president, you push this. What if Congress says no? What if Congress says, you know what?
I don't, stop me.
Just do it anyway?
Yeah,
Without their
because I'm the commander-in-chief. I don't need their permission to defend the nation. I would ask for their buy-in. I mean, in this regard, there can only be one commander-in-chief. I believe we need more troops in Iraq to make sure we're not hit here. I believe that the next 9/11 is coming from a Western passport holder who's gone to jihad in Syria is coming back here. I believe there's nobody left in Syria that can destroy ISIL and displace Assad because they've all been wiped out. If you had done what Lindsey Graham and John McCain suggested 3 years ago, Assad would be gone and Syria would be in a better spot. Now you got to get a regional army outside of Syria. Turkey, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt form a big army, and we got to be part of it. And if we're not part of it, they'll lose. They'll start shooting each other. We're going to need a 90 to 100,000 person army to go in on the ground in Syria and pull up the caliphate by its roots.
Isn't that a war? Isn't that a war?
Now, that's a military operation.
Is
We don't have a declared war.
So that's the way you get around the Constitution, which says only the Congress can declare war. By you ask them if it's okay, they say no, and you do it anyways. But it's not a war, it's just a military
Only the
operation.
Congress can get us in a legal state of war. The commander-in-chief can do whatever they think is appropriate to defend the nation. And if you don't like what I'm doing, cut off funding. That's the appropriate role of the Congress.
Whatever is appropriate to defend the nation, but that would be as many troops as you want, as much military
As to
activity.
destroying ISIL, here's my plan. Whatever it takes, as long as it takes, until we defeat
Right, but
them.
if you're gonna, so if that involves invading Syria and sending troops into Syria without a declaration of war from Congress, or even Congress is okay, that's constitutionally all right?
All I'm saying is I would go to Congress and I would ask, but I would not. See, this is the whole point. At the end of the day, I'm telling you what I would do and why I would do it. I would ask Congress. One, I would be president after having said I want to do this, so the American people will be with me. I'm not sneaking up on you. I'm not trying to play a trick. I'm not doing what Woodrow Wilson said. You know, we're never going to war, and we wind up going to war. So the bottom line is I'm telling you we need more American ground forces to destroy ISIL. We're going to need a regional force, of which we will be about 10%, to go in and destroy them in Syria. Yes, I would ask Congress. I want them to buy into what I'm trying to do. I want them to help me destroy ISIL because there's no substitute for victory. And have you ever heard one person in this race use the word victory?
Is there any limit to what the president can do with the military under the Constitution?
Sure, you can't break the law.
Other than that, so constitutionally, you can escalate the military conflict abroad to whatever level the president wants. There's no limit on that.
There's only one commander-in-chief, and the limitations are the checks and balances of the Congress.
Is that, you think, what the founders intended when they
Totally,
said Congress can declare
absolutely.
war?
See, declaring war doesn't mean you can't use the military unless the Congress agrees. You want to destroy America's ability to defend herself? Have 535 commander-in-chiefs.
Well, the commander-in-chief operationally is in charge, but declare war, was not meant to be operational control.
No,
That was meant
it's a legal state you're creating.
Right.
So anything short of that, what I would suggest this is all about is that you don't want one person to throw the nation into a legal state of war. What you want,
What's the difference between a legal state of war and invading a foreign country?
the difference
I
is
mean, they would consider that a state of war, would they not?
that how many times have we declared war in this country?
Well, that's kind of beside the point. What we're talking about is
No.
going forward. If we invade Syria, or if
We invaded Iraq without a declaration of war.
with Congress's approval.
Yeah,
Right.
so where does
But
it
what
say
you're
in the
saying is
Constitution
without
that
Congress's approval, you do it anyway. So are we talking, Russia? Are we talking going into Crimea and saying, look, we're gonna send 100,000
Clinton went into Kosovo without UN mandates? We had a debate about all this. All I can say is that here's the way I view being commander-in-chief. That if I want to send more troops to Iraq because I think it's necessary, and the Congress doesn't agree, the way to stop me is to cut off funding. Because you can't let the Congress sit down as a body and tell me how many troops I need, where they're going to go, because you're basically turning over running the military to 535 people. If you don't like the fact that I would be part of a regional force to go into Syria because I think it's in our national security interest to prevent another 9/11 that's coming our way, then the way you would stop the operation as Congress is to cut off the money.
Is there a
Guys, I
way?
think Paul's gotta get up to his
Yeah,
next,
Okay, no, can we have 5 more minutes? Where are we going?
I'll give you 3.5.
Okay.
Alright, so I-
Can't be nearly as fun as this.
Yeah, all right.
So you tell me, what does the president do without a declaration of war? Does that mean he can't use the military until Congress agrees? No. It means that a declaration of war is a collaborative process. The best way to interpret what the Constitution means and how America operates is to look at 200-something years of history. How many times have we declared war? Less than 2 handfuls. How many military operations have we been in since the founding of the Republic? Dozens, multiple dozens. So the precedent is pretty clear. War being declared is an exceptional event in American history. Using military force in a variety of ways is the norm, where the commander-in-chief dictates the terms of the engagement and Congress agrees or not. This goes back to Vietnam, the War Powers Act.
Sure.
And every conservative worth their salt has said the War Powers Act is unconstitutional, because you're trying to take the authority away from the commander-in-chief to make military decisions. What you should be doing is saying stop funding. I agree that would be a constitutional check and balance.
Real quick, since we're running out of time, do you think Hillary's going to get indicted over the years?
No.
4. Haven't we only done it 4 times?
Declare war?
1812.
I was going to say 4, but
1898.
now that you said 4, I'm reluctant to say 4. I was going to say 4. So,
And just to follow up on something you said.
but see, I don't think what I said is provocative at all. That's the norm here. Congress, here's what I would do as commander-in-chief. I'd ask the Congress to help me, but if they want to stop me, then what they would do is say, all right, President Graham, we're not going to authorize any funds for the invasion being part of a regional force. And I would accept that. I would say, okay, you trump me.
Speaking of Trump, if Trump's the nominee, would you vote for him?
Yeah, because I'm running as part of a party. I would hold my nose and I would vote for him. Because for me to say that I wouldn't means that I'm not a whole lot different than him.
Are there any, you had sort of gotten in trouble, if we would put it that way, the other day about talking about raising capital gains taxes as part of a deal, budget deal.
I'm not
so
in
forth.
trouble, is what I believe.
Right.
I didn't
Would
say
you-
capital gains taxes.
Well, that's what I wanted to get at. Are there any tax increases that to you would be off the table as part of a deal that involves entitlement?
I wouldn't raise rates.
What rates? Business
I wouldn't
rates,
raise any
individual
rates.
You would raise
The
any
way
rates?
you generate revenue to get Democrats to the table is that you don't raise rates, you lower them. You eliminate deductions and credits. $1.2 trillion a year is given through the tax code to various groups. A lot of them are very popular.
Well, did I miss it? I get it incorrectly when you
Carried
said-
interest.
Carried interest.
That would
and
be a rate
That
increase.
would be a rate increase, correct.
Yeah, because it should be ordinary income anyway.
Right, so carried interest, capital gains,
No,
okay.
anything that generates jobs, I would lower rates. What you do is Simpson Bowles has the following configuration. You eliminate and cap deductions. You take back into the Treasury a large part of the 1.2 trillion, and you allocate it in two fashions. You lower the corporate rate to 25%. You lower tax rates in general. You have 3 rates versus 5. And you take some of the money to put down on debt. Why is that revenue? Some people say, in the Republican Party, that if you eliminate a deduction, every penny must go to lowering rates. What I say is that I would eliminate a deduction and allocate some of it to debt retirement under one condition: that Democrats agree to reform entitlements. I would go to ordinary income from carried interest under one condition: that Democrats agree to reform entitlements.
But you would not be okay with taking the capital gains rate and matching the income tax rate?
No, I'm trying to create jobs. Tax policy is about jobs. Simpson Polls is about debt. Nobody in their right mind on the conservative side would raise tax rates in the name of getting us out of debt because you create fewer jobs. What conservatives ought to embrace is that if you do nothing, you're going to raise taxes. Because if you leave entitlements unattended to, you either cut benefits or raise taxes. So the largest tax increase in American history is sitting on your butt doing nothing. So what I would do is I would manage this problem in an economically sound way. I would generate revenue by eliminating deductions, take part of the revenue to pay down rates to create job opportunity and growth, but at the same time I'd retire debt because I got to do something to get Democrats in a room. That's basically what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did.
So let's finish up with some breaking news. Tom Brady is free.
Yes, there's
No
justice.
suspension, the judge nullified.
Yeah. This is the beginning of a new era in America
But aren't you?
for an out-of-control judiciary.
But wouldn't you be a Panthers fan?
Not in New Hampshire. I'm not stupid. I'm in it to win it. Go Brady. Thanks, guys.
You're gonna do the CNN kiddies table?
Yeah, I'll be at the kiddies table as long as you use National Public. And our biggest fear is coming true. Look at what we're trying to do.